everything starts small. And instead of being ashamed of it, we should lean into that.
Welcome to the Kingspiration Podcast. This is the place where you'll learn how to get unstuck and gain momentum in your life and business. Each week, we tackle the real aspects of entrepreneurship, personal development, relationships, and fitness. I'm your co-host, Ethan King, from Atlanta, Georgia, USA, entrepreneur, TEDx speaker, and best-selling author of Wealth Beyond Money.
And I'm your co-host, Justin King, no relation to Ethan, from Cape Town, South Africa, entrepreneur, speaker, and business growth strategist. Our journey crosses continents and cultures, sharing wisdom and experiences to propel you forward. Welcome to Kingspiration. Let's start the conversation.
What has been your favorite quote from the past week, and what inspiration has it given you? So, Justin, you want to start out with yours?
Yeah, absolutely. So I've been on a bit of a reading binge of late. And instead of going down the rabbit hole of buying a whole bunch of new books, I've actually been rereading old books that I have on my Kindle. So I love my Kindle, and it's lovely to be able to highlight and have things saved in Readwise that I mentioned in one of our early episodes. And the standout quote for me this past week has been from Turning Pro by Stephen Pressfield. And it's a great read because the book itself will probably take you 2 hours to read. It's one of those that you can read on a short flight, which is always a great type of book. And the quote that really has stood out for me is, what we get when we turn pro is we find our power. We find our will and our voice, and we find our self-respect. We become who we always were, but had until then been afraid to embrace and to live out. So the whole book is around this premise. It speaks about turning pro, but it speaks about what it means to live an amateur life. And that can be an amateur life in your relationships, in your professional life, whatever it may be, and what you have to do to turn that corner and to become pro, to turn pro and embrace the person that you know you can be, but are just too afraid to be. And I must admit, I've just got highlight after highlight after highlight, and I've revisited it a few times this week because it's been extremely, extremely powerful. And this concept, again, I'm a sports fan, and I think that's why he doesn't reference sports in the book, but just the concept or the idea of turning pro is very much a sports-related term, or in my mind. And that's why it's just resonated so much. And it's forced me to be very introspective around a lot of areas of my life where I'm asking myself, and do I have the habits of an amateur, or do I have the habits of a professional? So that's what it comes down to, is habits of a professional or habits of an amateur, and having to ask myself those hard questions and be honest and make a choice around where I'm going to start showing up as a pro. And for me, a big part of that is taking control, and also facing that fear, or having the courage, rather, let's say, than facing the fear, but having the courage to really choose being who you know you can be. So I got a lot of that, and that paragraph, those few lines in particular, sum that up for me.
Yeah, that's interesting. I actually recently reread that same exact book, Turning Pro. And when I reread books, I do it because I want to come at it through a different lens of what's going on in my life right now. It's amazing. It can almost be like reading a completely different book if you're listening to it or reading it through a different lens than when you did 5 years ago or 7 years ago, right? So for Turning Pro, I've been, and I know you have too, but I've been really looking at my public speaking career and how that's evolved over the years. And where I am now, I'm in a position where I'm getting paid to do a lot of speaking gigs. I have tours lined up for the fall, but I also have my day-to-day business that I run, Zeus's Closet, and I find myself being pulled between the two. And, a pro goes all in. There's commitment. It's all in commitment on one thing. If you think about pros, like back to the sports arena, your LeBron James, your Michael Jordans, they're not, part-time gardeners or something. I'm sure they have hobbies, but they're all in on the level of commitment and practice and dedication that they give to their craft. And I often think, like, well, what would it look like for me to go all in and go pro when it comes to the speaking? And actually, my quote is a bit related to that, although ironically, it comes from the Bible. but it's like I said, it's not one of those religious Bible verses, but it's do not despise the small beginnings, for the Lord rejoices to see the work begin. And that's from Zechariah 4:10. And the reason that stood out to me is because oftentimes we hesitate to start things because you have to start, everything starts small. And when we start things, we don't want to be seen as small or insignificant. It's like when we put those videos out, it's like, oh, well, it only got 12 likes or whatever. And you're kind of ashamed of that. We wish we could just start everything big or already at the pro level, but everything starts small. And instead of being ashamed of it, we should lean into that, because that's, it says the Lord rejoices in it. But if you want to interpret that a different way, if you're not religious or whatever, you can look at it like, well, the universe celebrates small beginnings because that's what turns into big things. So lean into the small beginnings.
I love that. It also, it makes starting a little bit easier.
Mm-hmm.
It makes it less daunting. I think that is maybe the best word. It's to make change ultimately, because if we want to start something, we ultimately looking to make change, and to change something or become a different person, or to make changes is daunting. And if it's just a case of all you have to do today is get the toes across the start line, or you're wanting to become better at swimming, right? Today it is a win if we just get our feet onto the top step. You've got a fear of water, and that means you've crossed the start line, which means that you are closer to the finish by definition.
Yeah.
So I love that.
Related to your quote, in order to turn pro, you have to start amateur. You have to start small before you can even look at going pro. It doesn't make any sense to go the other way. And when it comes to like public speaking, I mean, I remember times when I would have to go around and speak for free to small, tiny audiences. That's just part of the, getting the reps in and doing the cycles in order to get to the point where now I'm being paid to speak and getting flown out to different places. But as much as I would like to have just started there, it doesn't work that way. You have to get in the reps. You have to start small. So I think it's interesting that we didn't talk about this beforehand, but our quotes are very, very much related.
Very, very closely aligned. And maybe it's a case of you don't necessarily have to go from amateur to pro. There's also the semi-pro step. If you're wanting to start small and just don't get stuck there, just don't get stuck in semi-pro purgatory, because that will be a terrible place to be. So yeah, but I love those, and very, very, very strange how closely linked they are, considering we didn't chat about it.
For sure.
That's a wrap for today's episode of Kingspiration. We hope this conversation sparked insights to ignite action in your life and business.
We're on this journey together, sharing our challenges and successes to help all of us take the next step towards building momentum and ultimately reaching our goals.
If you found value in today's episode, please share it with someone else who might benefit and leave us a 5-star review.
And remember to hit subscribe so you don't miss out on our weekly conversations. Until next time, keep rolling, keep growing, and keep being inspired.